You shouldn't be in here.
Trespassers get forced to watch instructional VHS tapes. Warning! Removing the Magic the Gathering starter video from this case is like opening Pandora's box. Unimaginable monsters with razor sharp teeth and really bad breath are dying to escape. This video shows you how to summon them at will and unleash them on your friends. So, ready to deface the enemy? That is the excerpt from the back of the starter instructional video, which came with the starter set way back in the day. This is a 1999 product. I think it's very old. And it's cringy, but in a kind of flavorful, soulful way. Anyway, hey there, kiddos, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. And in today's video, we're going to be sitting back in my... chair's not being that squeaky lately. I'm kind of worried about that. Relaxing and having a little conversation with all of you, not about the starter VHS tape or the intro demo disc for Magic the Gathering or their equivalents across the other card games, because Magic has them, Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely has them, and I'm fairly sure Pokemon had them as well. But instead, I just want to take a few minutes out of my day, and of yours too, because you're watching this, so I'm taking up some of your time, to talk about just how old some of these card games are, and just how much they have changed over time. Because, yes, Magic the Gathering is old enough to, again, have a VHS tape. That's upside down. A VHS tape showing you how to play the game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is old enough, I think, to have a VHS tape. I'm fairly sure the dual... There was a really cringy Yu-Gi-Oh! Video I remember watching like way back in the day. It was on a VHS tape, I think. It might have been on a DVD, but I digress. Like, some of these card games are super old, and with age comes change. A lot of the card games we have known for a very long time have changed drastically over the last 20 plus years, to the point where for some they are completely unrecognizable to how they used to be. Others are just different in older ways, and others, like Magic, seem to be losing their identity. And in today's video, I just want to reiterate to you something that you've probably heard before, in that change is neither good nor bad, but it is different. And that is a line I think I've heard plenty of times from media, at the very least, often enough. I think it's a quote from Warhammer. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know where the actual quote is from, but I'm fairly sure I read it in a Warhammer book once upon a time. But over time, as game design changes, as metagame needs shift, and as designers run out of ways to design cards within the current existing framework, card games inevitably shift and change over time. Now, sometimes, like in the case of Pokemon, that change is relatively subtle. Other times, in the case of Pokemon, that change can be extremely, extremely noticeable. How card games change is not really something I want to get into, but instead I want to talk about how change is received by players over time. You see, I'm not exactly what you would call a smart person, so I couldn't possibly go into every single metagame shift, new mechanic, and crazy rules change devised for each of the main three TCGs, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Magic. But I can, at the very least, cover each of those three games in general and talk about just the overall reception that they've received over the years. And we're actually going to start with, believe it or not, we're going to start with Pokemon, then move to Magic, and then start with the one that I think has had genuinely the most disastrous change, Yu-Gi-Oh! With Pokemon, you'll be surprised to learn that the Pokemon card game has stayed relatively consistent in terms of its core mechanics, mechanical complexity, rule set, and even the skill ceiling over the years. Yes, new gimmicks do come out from time to time, and new blocks bring all kinds of crazy new abilities for Pokemon and varying levels of power in the meta. But Pokemon, in my opinion, has handled the rotation of its sets the best of the three major TCGs, and so it allows it to keep a relatively low power level consistently throughout the years. With that said, I think Pokemon has also positioned itself to have the best reception to change in the TCG, if only because a lot of the new mechanics, the new changes, whether they are good and received well, or bad and received really poorly, they're only temporary. And the Pokemon Company knows that in just a few years they are going to phase out and they'll be able to improve upon what they've worked with, creating what is, in my opinion, a relatively stable metagame. Yes, I know that there are long periods of time in the TCG where the metagame is awful. Yes, I'm relatively aware of the current state of the metagame, but I digress. For the most part, Pokemon is fairly well received in terms of mechanical complexity, metagame, power, and overall rules. The game you play now is basically the same game as it was way back when it first came out, which is crazy to think about. It's part of why I attend pre-releases for Pokemon, because I remember the cool rules of the game from back in the day, so it's easy for me to, like, every 3 months or so, slot into a pre-release and just have a bit of fun for an afternoon, right? Now let's move on to Magic. Lately, there's been a lot of discussion about the changing direction of Magic and the loss of its identity thanks to Universes Beyond. But you'll be shocked to know, or perhaps not shocked to know, that Magic as a game has undergone some serious changes over the decades. Some small, slight mechanic changes here, removing damage as part of the stack there, completely removing block structures everywhere. Some gargantuan, and yes, Universes Beyond is part of that gargantuanness. I would actually say that the biggest change in Magic the Gathering was a subtle one that occurred, I would say, between 2014 and 2019, over the course of 5 years, and that change was the Gatewatch saga. Okay, starting in Magic Origins, which I think was 2015 or 2016, and going all the way up to the end of the War of the Spark, Magic the Gathering aesthetically really seemed to change as we jumped around planes way more frequently. We followed a small set of characters way more consistently than we ever had before, and it seemed like the overall flavor of the game was shifting from high fantasy, like it had been since the 90s, and had shifted subtly towards more of an action-y superhero almost kind of flair, as it seemed Wizards of the Coast was really trying to follow in Marvel's footsteps and establish this superhero team in the Gatewatch to kind of base their game around. How successful they were with that is kind of up to you, the fan, to decide, but it definitely resulted in an aesthetic change in the core identity of the game. But it's not the only major shift to the game that we've had over the years. There was the reserved list, there was the 8th edition rules changes, the creation of Modern, the creation of Commander, and the privatization of Commander as Wizards' biggest format. And yes, there is the creation of the most controversial, I think, addition to Magic the Gathering, Universes Beyond, which has really gone a long way in just a few short years to strip away a lot of what was left of Magic's core identity. No longer was this a game where you had two planeswalkers dueling against one another for dominion over a magical plane and its resources. No, instead, this is a game where two pop culture nerds cast pop culture references at one another. You can have the battle bus launching, I don't know, Homer Simpson at a Gundam character, probably. Those are probably going to be Universes Beyond cards within the next few years, right? I think the Battle Bus is already a Magic the Gathering card. I'm pretty sure Fortnite actually had a Magic layer at one point. And for better or worse, Universes Beyond is here to stay. And it's a change that some fans are okay with, and other fans are not okay with. Some people have left the game over Universes Beyond. Others have joined the game exclusively over Universes Beyond. And whether or not you think Universes Beyond is a good thing or not is kind of dependent on which side of the aisle you fall into. Are you the kind of person who loved Magic as this high fantasy, really interesting, evocative adventure between two dueling planeswalkers? Or are you the kind of guy who just kind of likes the card game mechanics and the rules behind it, and you're happy that it has pop culture characters like Cloud Strife that you get to play as? How you answer that question will determine whether or not you think Universes Beyond is ultimately a good thing or not. Right? But moving on to Yu-Gi-Oh! I think a lot of people can agree that a lot of changes made with Yu-Gi-Oh! Over the years have been exclusively negative. You see, every few years a new Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime comes out, and every few years a new special kind of summoning mechanic has to come out to support that anime, right? I remember when Yu-Gi-Oh! Just had fusion monsters in the extra deck, okay? And ritual monsters, which nobody ever played. And then I remember Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds dropping. And synchro monsters being introduced. And they were the most overpowered, broken, easy to summon things ever. And they completely warped the game around them. You either played Stardust Dragon and a handful of other really good ones like Goyo Guardian. Boy, oh boy, was I never happy to see a Goyo Guardian being summoned on turn one. Oh, awful stuff. Either you played with the new synchros or you lost. Then a few years later, we get the XYZ summons. And the XYZ summons are even easier to summon. You just need two monsters of the same level to slap on top of each other, and boom. You have an even more powerful, super warped monster from the extra deck. And then a few more years go by, and we get Pendulum monsters. And believe it or not, Pendulum is where I completely checked out of Yu-Gi-Oh! And from what I understand, a lot of people checked out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Completely by the time Pendulums came around. Because they were just so convoluted and so complicated. And they just changed the game so much for them that it became a huge issue. But guess what? They weren't done. A few more years passed by, and we get Link Summoning, and Link Summoning, because of the way the Link system worked at the time it was first introduced, it actually prevented you from using the other special summon mechanic monsters. And loads of people hated that. When it came to Synchro monsters and XYZ monsters and Pendulum monsters, they didn't prevent you from playing with the previous iterations like fusions or whatever. But Link monsters prevented either player from playing with the older special summon mechanics, just because of how the Link mechanics were first integrated into the game, which a lot of people took extreme offense to. And a lot of people quit the game. There was a huge uproar. Konami had to change the rules, I think. And yeah, it was crazy. Now, to my knowledge, I don't think there's been a new special summon mechanic since Link monsters have entered the game. Maybe Konami's learned their lesson, finally, and have stopped trying to cook up new ways to summon monsters. But I don't know. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Of today is the card game that is the furthest from the card game it was when it launched. Like I said with Pokemon, I can go months without playing Pokemon, and I just hop into a pre-release, take a quick look over the effects of the various cards I pulled, and go, okay, I have a decent idea of what I'm doing here, right? With Magic the Gathering, while there's certainly flavorful choices I don't agree with, the game itself, as long as you understand whatever rules changes have happened lately, you can play the game with the same knowledge you had 25 years ago. Mana still works the same. Turns and phases still work the same. Combat is still basically the same. It all works out. But with Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so different now with the different summoning mechanics, all the different levels of complexity to the game, all the different ways to breeze through your deck and get a one-turn KO. It's completely different, you know? And I would personally play modern Pokemon. I would play modern Magic. I would not play modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Just because it's so different from what I'm used to, so different from what I grew up with, and I just wouldn't even give it the time of day. But there's also plenty of people out there who love modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's fine too. You know, it is what it is. And I think overall, the fact that that change can happen at all is a good thing. You see, there are loads. You get into a slightly different angle to have this conversation. There are loads of card games out there that are genuinely good. The Mega Man NT Warrior TCG, the Transformers TCG. Plenty. I think there was an Avatar TCG that was okay as well. Harry Potter TCG. Plenty of card games are out there that have come and gone without having any chance whatsoever to have any real major changes occur to them, right? Loads of card games have come and gone without the time necessary to make big sweeping changes to how they work. So we'll never know what the Mega Man NT Warrior card game would have looked like if they had to make major changes to how the core game was designed, and instead of just net navies, they eventually brought in robot masters from the 80s video games, right? We'll never know how the Harry Potter TCG would have evolved if it was allowed to age with the movies, right? We'll never know how a theoretical 20 years of the Star Trek customizable card game would look. But we can see how Magic changed over 30 years. We can see how Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon changed over 20 years. And we can be thankful that those changes even had the opportunity to occur, because that means that these games are popular enough and beloved enough that they've been allowed to stand the test of time and change with time. And if they didn't change, they probably would stagnate and become games that were forgettable and eventually fail. And where am I going with this? Besides just being thankful in general that these games exist and they have the chance to change, I want to point out another game that is relatively new, not super new anymore. It's about 5 years old, but Flesh and Blood is just now starting to hit its change period, I think. We just had this huge announcement for Compendium of Wraith, and in it we are going to be finally getting reprints of the Fable cards. This is a huge deal. In the first 5 years of the game's history, with one exception for foreign language sets, they've never done reprints of Fables before. This is a brand new major change to the TCG. And looking back, looking at the past of Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh!, I can say with some certainty that this change is neither good nor bad. It's going to depend heavily on how individuals respond to it. And I have absolutely no doubt in my heart, in my soul, and in my 1/3 of a brain that more change is going to come to Flesh and Blood. And it's going to be a very different game 5 years from now than it is 5 years ago. I earnestly believe that, because looking at the other examples of card games that have been around for a long time, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Pokemon, if Flesh and Blood is going to stick around for a while, it's going to change. Whether or not that change is going to be subtle or drastic, Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Remains to be seen. I can't possibly judge it or guess, right? I can't see the future. I can hope that it'll be more subtle, like with what Pokemon's had, and hope that it doesn't become like Yu-Gi-Oh!, where there's completely new ways of, I don't know, equipment that become their own heroes, subdecks that deal damage to the opponent right away, just for existing, and they have their own turns. James White, don't write that down. But yeah, I think change is just going to naturally be a part of TCGs as they age, and that's fine. So, thank you so much for watching. This was a longer video than usual. I don't usually like to ramble on this, but I do like reminiscing about the past and hoping that the future is going to be good. I do think Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Are going to continue to exist. I think they got plenty of life left in them. I think Pokemon and Magic definitely have the biggest staying power right now, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not terrible. I know that it's never in a good spot in the last few years, but it still has a lot of devoted fans, right? And Flesh and Blood is still the new hotness on the market. And other card games are going to stick around too. Like, I think One Piece is going to do fine. I think Sorcery is going to do fine. But I suppose that's enough of that out of me. thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think change is bad? Do you want every card game to just be old school 93, 94 Magic? Which is an awesome format. I won't lie if I'm being completely honest, but I digress. Head over to Patreon if you want to throw cash at me. Head over to the Discord if you want to chat with me. All that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.